Once the patient is lying on the couch and all necessary hygiene measures related to disposable materials, like couch sheets, swabs, white coats, gloves, etc. have been taken, the therapist shall proceed to take her blood pressure, since if it is excessively high or low, the session should not take place. The abdomen should be felt in order to locate scars from recent operations, hernias, etc., since they could constitute an absolute or relative counterindication. The therapist should show the patient the speculum to be used and explain to her how it is going to be inserted and what she's going to feel. It is important to explain to the patient that there is no need to worry about possible leaks, as the speculum is designed to prevent them. On the other hand, the machine's drainage system is a closed system, and there will therefore be no problems with any kind of discomfort. It is important to properly connect the drainage tube to the machine. The speculum should then be lubricated. Once the patient lies on her side, the therapist will examine the rectum in order to check that everything is okay, also lubricating the anal channel so that it doesn't hurt. The therapist should then proceed to introduce the speculum firmly but not sharply. The shut-off valve is removed and the irrigation tube connected. The latter should always be higher and the drainage tube lower. We start the session at a temperature between 36 and 37 degrees Celsius. Fluctuations outside this temperature range can be used for more specific procedures. Likewise, we will set a flow volume of about 60 milliliters. On the other hand, the first irrigations should be carried out with fast pressure discharges so that the patient can gently feel how water is coming into her bowel. The rectal sigmoid anal region can thus become sensitized to the water inflow, the temperature and pressure changes, avoiding any unnecessary pain and neurovegetative reactions. This therapy should be carried out in no hurry. It is also very positive to have a constant and direct contact with the patient. It is advisable for the patient to breathe in a calm and relaxed way so that the abdominal wall and ventilation work properly. After this adaptation period, the filling starts. Therefore, only the filling button should be pressed. From now on, we check how the needle goes up in the pressure gauge, indicating the pressure that water is exerting inside the intestine. If the needle reaches 100 millibars, red zone in the pressure gauge, the machine stops automatically. The first filling periods should be shorter so that the intestine can adapt itself to the temperatures and pressure changes. By the end of the session, fillings should be longer. During the filling, it is essential that the therapist keeps constant visual contact with the pressure and temperature gauges in order to know when to change to the quick discharge. Once we have pressed the quick discharge button, we can turn back to the patient, give her a massage, etc. The remote control is an element of this equipment that grants us a higher freedom to treat the patient with a massage, to have direct control on the speculum, etc. Once the sensitizing phase, in which the first feces discharge has already taken place, is finished, the speculum should be held while the patient is asked to gently turn to the supine position. The irrigation and drainage tubes should then remain placed between the patient's legs. The abdominal massage needn't be deep. Only by touching the abdominal wall, a reflex intestine emptying is brought about. This massage helps patients with a lazy and dilated intestine to expel air bubbles. This procedure should always take place in the discharge phase, never while filling. When we start filling the patient's bowel again, we should ask her to breathe in and out. Discharges should take place while breathing out. This is a way to functionally re-educate the abdominal wall of the intestine. When we proceed to discharge water into the patient's bowel, it is good to make small movements with the speculum, making sure that it doesn't come out. We thus prevent the speculum from adhering to the intestinal wall too much and get air bubbles expelled. We can simultaneously press the abdomen gently in order to help the discharge. It is advisable to rest for a while between one filling and the next. The time the needle of the pressure gauge needs to come up together with the water flow, gives us an idea of the intestine's capacity to distend. This capacity should increase during the course of the sessions. During the discharge, it is also important that the needle of the pressure gauge comes down to 0 or near 0. Otherwise, it indicates that there are feces or gases that must be expelled. Intestinal cleaning is important in colon hydrotherapy, but the relationship between the filling and the emptying capacity is as important as the intestinal clearing or more, as it re-establishes intestinal peristalsis. Colon hydrotherapy has therefore a therapeutic character that extends beyond just cleaning the bowel, since it re-establishes the proper function of the intestinal wall and of the peristalsis. The number of sessions to be carried out is justified by the possible relationship between a good intestinal function and the waste drainage. Once the feces start to flow out, it is important to watch its consistency. If there are food remains that weren't properly digested, it is a sign of incorrect chewing. The color of the feces can give us information of different intestinal disorders or the particle presence due to the presence of fungi, foreign bodies, etc. We can collect samples to analyze them in the laboratory, study the characteristics of the intestinal bacteria, the possible presence of parasites, etc. For the last discharge, the irrigation should be stopped and the machine set to quick discharge. The patient should now be asked to breathe in and out while her abdomen is pressed. The speculum can thus be extracted painlessly. Once the speculum has been extracted, the glove should be used as shown on the screen, in order to wrap the speculum and be disposed of afterwards. Once the therapy is completed, and after checking that the patient feels all right and the pulse is normal, he or she should slowly sit up and go to the toilet to finish the bowel movement. It is important to point out that this machine is designed to help the patient to re-establish a normal bowel movement. It should not be used to substitute the patient's natural bowel movement.